Against the backdrop of US-brokered peace talks being effectively suspended, Russian troops have nevertheless launched their spring-summer offensive against the so-called Ukrainian belt of fortifications in the Donetsk region. The main pressure is concentrated in the Lyman sector, which opens the way to Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Earlier, Ukrainian military officials reported this, and today the information was confirmed by the Washington-based Institute for the Study of War. According to Ukrainian military data, a large-scale Russian offensive from 7 directions at once began back on March 19th. The attack was carried out simultaneously from several directions, which indicates a change in tactics from moving in columns to dispersed strikes in order to complicate the work of Ukrainian drones. And at the same time, the Ukrainian delegation was holding talks with the Americans in the United States, so this highlights that in Crimea, they chose the timing for the attempt to break through the Ukrainian defense in Crimea for a reason. In this episode, we'll break down what's really happening on the front lines and whether Russia has actually started that very spring-summer offensive. My name is Pechiy. Let's discuss this together. Let's discuss this topic together, but before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this video. If you want to support the work of this channel, you can do so with any donation or subscription. How to do this? All the links and details are in the description of this video. I will be grateful for any support from you. So, the Washington-based Institute for the Study of War in its latest report states that Russian troops have likely begun the offensive against the Ukrainian fortress belt, which was planned for spring-summer 2026, that is, the main line of Ukraine's defense in the Donetsk region. In particular, Russian troops have begun intensified ground operations in the direction of Lyman as well. If you want to support me, give a like. Returning to Sloviansk from the northern tip of this fortress belt from the northeast. Conditions for a further offensive on Sloviansk from the east and southeast at a later date. I should note right away that this belt of fortresses is exactly the territory that Putin is demanding to be simply handed over to him during negotiations. That is precisely this part, these territories that Russia, if you want to support the channel, then like it. This part, he says, give it to us during negotiations. Trump hints like go ahead and do it. I would like to note that on March 21, the 3rd Army Corps of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported that back on March 19th, units of the 1st Guards Tank Army and the 20th Guards Combined Arms Army of the Russian Federation carried out a mechanized and motorized offensive in the direction of Lyman. Approximately a battalion took part in the attack. If you want to support the channel, then like it. Russian troops launched an offensive in 7 directions, involving more than 500 Russian infantrymen, dozens of armored vehicles, and more than 100 motorcycles, buggies, and all-terrain vehicles. This battalion-scale offensive significantly surpasses most Russian mechanized offensives in recent months. The company-level offensive carried out by Russian troops on March 19th was part of this larger battalion-scale offensive. So give it a like. Lyman is a key stronghold on the way to Sloviansk and can serve as a base for the Wild Russians and their efforts to capture both Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. Well, that's why it's obvious that Russian troops need to step up their efforts specifically in the direction of Lyman in order to further attempt to advance on Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. And here I'll quote the Institute for the Study of War. They are putting pressure on Ukrainian forces by intensifying offensives using large formations. If you want to support the channel, then give a like. They changed their tactics, moving from attacks with mechanized columns to dispersing equipment across various directions of the offensive simultaneously, similar to the tactics of dispersed infantry. Russian troops attack in various directions to suppress and distract the Ukrainian defense. If you want to support the channel, then give more likes. With guided glide bombs, K-3000 Lancet loitering munitions, and Molnia drones in the direction of Lyman. The goal of such attacks is to weaken Ukrainian logistics and defensive capabilities before ground operations, to allow Russian troops to advance faster and more easily across the territory. Do you want to support the channel then? It was reported that Russian troops have recently intensified ground assaults in the directions of Slavyansk and Kramatorsk as part of preparations for future offensive operations and advancing towards the high ground. On the approaches to Konstantinovka, Russian troops are actively transferring personnel to the approaches to Konstantinovka. Do you want to support and doubled artillery and tactical airstrikes in the direction of Kramatorsk? Then give a like, specifically to create conditions for the spring-summer offensive. Next, I'll share another quote from the Institute for the Study of War. It's unlikely that Russia, if you support the channel then, but they will probably achieve some tactical successes at the cost of significant losses. Russian troops lost 405 out of more than 500 servicemen who took part in a battalion-scale mechanized assault on March 19th. Such a level of losses is unacceptable and will reduce Russia's ability to conduct such large-scale assaults in the medium and long term. Let me emphasize again, a little over 500 infantrymen took part in the assault. If you want to support the channel, just understand the scale. I'll continue the quote. If you want to support the work of this channel, then leave a like. Positions for drone operators. Ukrainian forces are holding positions in advantageous terrain. Ukrainian control of the commanding heights east of Slovyansk will complicate Russia's advance towards Slovyansk from the relatively low-lying areas around Siversk. The exhausted, poorly trained and overburdened Russian troops in the Slovyansk direction will likely further limit Russia's gains in this area. Russian forces will not be able to launch and sustain an offensive towards Slovyansk without receiving additional troops or deprioritizing the offensive on Kupiansk in the Kharkiv region. Ukrainian forces are taking countermeasures that further complicate Russia's advance, such as more intense strikes with multiple launch rocket systems in the direction of Slovyansk and Kostiantynivka, with the aim of disrupting Russian artillery preparations and expanding the medium-range strike campaign to weaken both offensive operations and equipment. Ранительных возможностей России. It is worth noting that the Kremlin did not choose this time to attempt to break through the Ukrainian armed forces' defenses by accident. The fact is that the large-scale Russian attack on 7 fronts began on March 19th, and already on March 21st a bilateral meeting between the US and Ukrainian delegations took place in Miami, Florida. There are few details about this meeting, but the Kremlin was clearly hoping to disrupt it so that during the meeting they could announce successes at the front, claiming they had broken through the defenses. Because Ukrainians won't give up this part of Donbas, we're taking it by force. This would have allowed the American negotiators, Stephen Witkoff and Jared Kushner, to put pressure on the Ukrainian delegation. Like, to say, look, we told you to give up these territories and now they're being captured. But fortunately, the Ukrainian armed forces firmly suppressed the Russians' attempts to break through the Ukrainian defense. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments below this episode. Subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. If you want to support the work of this YouTube channel, you can do so with any donation. Links and details are in the description of this video. And I encourage you to subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pechiy News. The link is also in the description of this video. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.